So, Ian and Ellen, you guys received the second consecutive Emmy nomination for your show, Gaycation. Receiving this kind of recognition for a show that I know is very near and dear to not just your hearts, but to the hearts of so many people in this country, what does that mean for you guys?
I think we just feel the most grateful in terms of, like, firstly, to even have the platform, and then to get this form of recognition, needless to say, just like helps allow people to know about the show more and potentially to watch it. And needless to say, one of the reasons we make it is to just, in any way possible, offer more visibility for the LGBT community, particularly those who are the most marginalized in the community. And I think it's a testament to those who, risk their lives to tell their stories on the show, who, whether they're doing it anonymously or not, take huge risk. And they're the ones who, make it near and dear to people's hearts or help inspire and change people. And our job is to just go and listen and do the best we can. And then, of course, like, for our team that works so tirelessly on the show, of course, but I think mostly that's what we think of, or who we think of.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we think of I think we're just grateful that people are recognizing the show, that the voices are being heard, that people that do put their lives at risk are, that they are being acknowledged, and that what they put at stake is reaching people. And we work really hard. Our team works really, really hard to make sure that we're covering as many bases as possible, that we're being as fair as possible, we're being as responsible as possible, that we're being as progressive as we can within the container that we're in. So there is a lot of conversation, a lot of hard work, and then we're trying to, on the ground, be as immersive and intimate and as engaged as possible. And that requires a lot of effort, and so we all just feel great about it.
Well, through the course of the show's 2 seasons, you guys have traveled not just across the country, but across the world. I mean, just some of the places you went to this past year. You went to the Ukraine, India, France. You went to the Deep South, and you went to Orlando. When you guys started the show, I mean, what did you realize, I guess, that trying to think of how to say this, that you were going to be having this kind of global outreach to all these different places?
Yeah, that was the original intention of the show, to share those stories, to try and create or offer more representation in terms of those in America as well as around the world. So that was, for sure, the goal. We didn't know how long it was going to last or what was going to happen. And I guess, I'm sad that we have to make the show, that these stories have to exist, that people have to fight so hard and risk their lives every day to just survive or create a society that lets them survive and have dreams and thrive and not be threatened with violence every day. But I'm grateful that we've been able to continue the show and have this platform to make it.
So now, the episode that you guys submitted for Emmy consideration, I think really typifies that goal a lot. It's the season 2 premiere when you guys went to Orlando following that awful shooting in the nightclub. Can you talk a little bit about going to Orlando in the days after that, what that experience was like?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we had lots of conversations around why should we go, and is it important to go, and what can we add to the conversation. And I think we felt like the LGBTQ experience and the Latinx experience, those experiences were sort of being shoved to the side or erased in the mainstream media. And I think we felt like it was just really important to hear those stories. And, of course, we wanted to be very aware of what that meant and what that meant for the community, and are they ready to share, and do they want to share, and are we being in any way invasive or annoying, or what are we doing there? But I think we felt like in the few days after, yes, the energy is one of mourning, mourning in a very huge, global way. It was affecting people globally. So that was all happening. But I think what we started to see very quickly was the community really coming together to help heal one another, to help understand, to help really shift perspectives, to have their voices heard, and to understand different communities and how different communities, the Latinx community, the Muslim community, the queer community, how everyone could come together in that moment to really understand why something like this can happen and how we can all work together to heal from it and stop it from happening again in the future. I think also an angle that we wanted to highlight was this happens on the daily for many, many people in the LGBTQ community and people of color communities. And so it was just a reminder that this is not a one-off event. This is happening every day for many, many people, and it continues to be on the rise in our country. And I would accredit that to the rise in hateful ideologies and hateful rhetoric coming from our politicians and coming from people that follow these politicians. And we're seeing it now. And I think the message from them is very clear that they want to incite violence and they want to incite death of people that they don't agree with. And I think that the Orlando episode was just sort of a real, I just think the place it sits in history is very important, but I think it hits all the layers of a deep-seated, rooted, hateful ideology that we're trying to destroy and deteriorate.
Ellen, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, well, I agree with that, and also, and the same thing in regards to the moments after the visceral response. Should we go? Do we want to be another like media presence there? And then we, but Ian already spoke to that. I think too, it was wanted to be a love letter to, the LGBT plus bars or safe, harmonious spaces. And I think there's been, this, rhetoric and opinion coming from like, so-called progressive people in the media who are sort of always downing these spaces or trivializing them or making people, seem ridiculous or too sensitive and to need them. And I think Orlando, and needless to say, which has happened the last couple days, which brings it more into the forefront despite happening every day, should make people know how much these spaces are important. Not to say that LGBT plus bars don't come with their own issues or transphobia in the community, but, biphobia, racism, etc. But the fact that these spaces exist and give people a sense of family, potentially their only sense of family, and that was ripped away from them. And lots of these spaces are being lost for many reasons, particularly spaces for lesbian and bi women. And that's really saddening. One of the oldest bars here in LA, the Oxwood Inn, just closed. And I went 2 weeks before it closed, and it was really, it was sad. Because that's a space for a lot of people who are, members of, more marginalized members of the LGBT community.
And also, I think on that note, I think it's important to reflect on that idea globally, because there are so many countries that can't even have an LGBTQ space because it will be attacked and it will be brutalized. And so they either have to meet in sort of like highly secure or gated communities, or they meet in secret places. But we have to reflect on the gratitude, the gratefulness that we have spaces to begin with in general, but also then reflect on these spaces they're dying because they're not for a various number of reasons are shutting down. Sorry, I'm like hearing myself.
I think there's a little of an echo on Ellen's. That's okay.
Just
to that point, in your travels around the world, what are some of the things that you guys have learned?
I mean, we've learned so much. I wouldn't, you know, it's hard. I wouldn't know where to begin. I think that's been one of the most powerful parts of making the show, and we feel so privileged and grateful for it. I mean, we get to sit with some of the most courageous individuals you could ever meet. Unbelievably powerful activists who dedicate their lives to this, who spend every day living in fear because of it, who, you know, literally don't want to and almost can't leave either the confines of their, you know, home, and who have just taught us so much, and are the ones that we should be listening to, especially in America right now, in terms of resistance movements being led by trans women of color who've been left behind in the community. And you know, I think that's probably one of the most extraordinary things that we've gained from the show, is being able to sit with these people and learn from them, and from those who aren't activists, who are just surviving every day, who are so resilient and powerful. And I think those are the people that have, you know, just taught us the most. Maybe Ian, you can.
Yeah, I mean, you say that also well. I mean, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you say that also well. I mean, I think.
Another level, I think we just have.
Another level, I think we just have.
Sorry.
That's it. I'm just gonna mute Ellen just while you're talking.
What?
I'm just gonna lower the volume on Ellen while you're talking. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay. Ellen can hear me? Yeah, okay.
We can hear you, yeah, go ahead.
No, I think Ellen said that also well. I think that I'm thinking about what we have to learn from other countries. I think we can't always isolate our experience. And I think that's really what happens when we talk about living in a bubble and not really reflecting on what's going on in other places around the world. I think on one level, because of social media, we have been able to share social justice movements and learn from each other, and tactics that worked in Russia maybe can work here or in other places around the world, right? So that's exciting. But, and I think, of course, because of social media, we have that connectivity, but how do we put that into action, and how do we really understand that what's happening in Jamaica is also happening here? What's happening in Ukraine is also happening in here, and we have a lot to learn from, for example, the neo-Nazi influence that's happening in Ukraine that's been brutalizing and terrorizing LGBTQ people, going to their LGBTQ marches, pride marches, and shutting them down, tear gassing people, luring LGBTQ people into these so-called gay safaris, brutalizing them, beating them, pouring urine on their heads. I mean, that, when Ellen and I were there a year ago, we thought, oh, this is highly possible to be happening in the US. And we're seeing it now in regards to race and people of color. But also that, you know, that's very likely to be happening to LGBTQ people. And so it's just really interesting. I think we can learn from the history of other countries and what they've already been doing and what they will do. And I just think it really is like we have to learn about global issues. It informs our being, it informs like what we participate in, it informs what we dismantle here.
And I mean, to that point, I think there's a lot of people just looking at what's happened over the last few days in this country and are wondering, you know, what do we do? What can we do? And so I just wanted to give the two of you a moment to say what you think we can do, you know, as people who are advocating on behalf of these issues. What we can do to try to help people, not just here but around the globe. Ellen, could you unmute your microphone? There you go. It's still muted. Can you try?
Sorry.
Can you try?
Sorry. Technology. I think Ian just touched on it a bit, and I think is a big reason, needless to say, while we make the show, that if the last 2 days were a big surprise for someone, that I think a really big important step is that you need to, if you're able to, or in whatever way you can, access resources to educate yourself. Because there's great denial in America, as well as in Canada, about the history in these countries and how it is oppressed and hurt and killed, and you know, tried to erase culture, etc., of you know, marginalized people, and that this neo-Nazi influence has been so significant and always relatively mainstream. And you know, I get, you know, one of the worst domestic terrorist threats towards America, and I think it's important to be able to educate each other, to come together, to form community, to share this information, to learn from those who have struggled throughout history, who have been the resilient ones, who've constantly pushed these movements, acknowledge our privilege, acknowledge that we're not doing enough, and figure out the ways we can do more, whether it's direct action, if we're able to, in our everyday life, or donating money to great causes, of course. But I think it's just about taking the responsibility to, you know, educate ourselves more, access those resources, and really transform our understanding of this society and this oppressive force that's been going on in the world for, you know, hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll highlight on that.
I think I'll highlight on that.
Oh, you have to delete. I mean, you have to mute, Ellen.
I got you.
Okay.
I just lowered the volume. You're okay.
Okay, cool. I think Ellen, yeah, I think we have to look at systematically what's in place, historically what's in place, and I think how to dismantle and disrupt and destroy systematically. I think so many people are talking about that and are actually taking actions and taking steps to do that. And I talk to those people all the time and really do learn from them. I think on a personal level, I think when you're looking just at bigotry and how it happens, yes, it happens in a systematic way. It happens in society in general, trying to control us with its messaging. But I think you have to look at the home, and I think you have to look at the people next to you and the people closest to you, and you have to look at bigotry in them. And I think in general, it takes two things. I think it takes active listening from people that face harsh discrimination or more discrimination than yourself. You have to support them and listen to them and ask them how you can help them and how you can keep them safe. And if you have it in you, then you should put all of your action toward that, as much action as possible. I think the other thing is, if you have family members or friends or anyone who is saying something that's bigoted or has bigoted ideologies, it is important to teach them. And sometimes I wonder if that teaching, of course, we try to make it about compassionate teaching, but sometimes it takes real sort of cutthroat ways of teaching people. And you know, I think that is in part of my daily practice. It's like, if someone says something that I feel is bigoted towards someone else, I will do all I can to inform them of their bigotry and ways in which they can change their attitude. I think there's all that needs to be happening. And I think that, and I think also when you're looking at just the LGBTQ community and the way that the cis white gay movement has ostracized trans women of color, people of color, I think that it's a responsibility for us to really, really listen, and not only listen and retweet and hashtag. That's great, like the conversation's happening, but what are the actions that you're taking on the daily to help really enhance these people's lives? And are you fighting for their healthcare? Are you giving back to them in terms of things they need and support? And I think we just really have to learn from them and say, what am I doing daily to enhance this experience, to help elevate these experiences that are not my own? That's my spiel on that.
Well, I think just personally speaking, you know, watching a show like this and hearing having conversations like this, it goes a long way. You know, thank you both for doing what you do, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your show. I look forward to seeing more of it, and I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for talking.
Thank you. Have a good one.